What if I told you that your first $100,000 is the hardest money you will ever make in your entire life? But every dollar after that comes noticeably, almost suspiciously easier. That's not a motivational quote. That's actually a well-known observation among investors, and even Charlie Munger, one of the most successful investors in history, once said that making his first $100,000 was the most difficult financial challenge he ever faced. Harder than everything that came after it combined. And if a man who eventually built a multi-billion-dollar fortune says his first 100,000 was the hardest part, then maybe, just maybe, the struggle you're feeling right now isn't a sign that something's wrong with you. It might just mean you're right on schedule. So today, we're going to break down the real roadmap to your first $100,000. Not some fantasy overnight riches version, but the actual, practical path that ordinary people earning ordinary incomes have used to get there. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why that first $100,000 feels like climbing a mountain, and exactly why everything after it starts feeling like walking downhill. So stick around until the end, because the final section is where everything comes together, and it's the part most people never get to hear. Let's start with why this number matters so much in the first place. $100,000 isn't just a round number that sounds impressive. It's actually a psychological and mathematical turning point in your financial life. Psychologically, it's the point where you stop feeling like you're just scraping by and start feeling like you're actually building something real. Mathematically, it's the point where compounding starts doing real, visible work for you instead of just sitting quietly in the background. Here's an example to make this clear. If you have $100,000 invested and it earns a modest 8% annual return, that's $8,000 in a single year, without you lifting a finger. Compare that to when you only had $10,000 invested. The same 8% return only gives you $800. The math is exactly the same. The percentage hasn't changed at all, but the actual dollar impact on your life is completely different. This is exactly why the first $100,000 feels so brutally slow, while the growth after it starts feeling almost effortless. You're not doing anything differently. Your money is simply doing more of the heavy lifting for you. Now let's talk about why this first stretch is genuinely the hardest part. Because understanding the difficulty is just as important as understanding the solution. In the beginning, almost all of your progress comes from your own effort, your salary, your side income, your discipline in saving. Investment returns at this stage are basically background noise. If you have $5,000 invested and the market has an incredible year with a 20% return, that's still only $1,000. Meanwhile, if you manage to save an extra $1,000 through your own work and discipline that same year, you've made just as much progress through effort as you did through investing. This is exactly why, early on, your income and your saving habits matter far more than your investment strategy. You cannot invest your way to your first $100,000 primarily through returns. You have to earn and save your way there, and investing simply becomes the container that holds and slowly grows what you've already built. This is also why so many people give up right around this stage. They open an investment account, they put in some money, and then they check it a few months later expecting to see dramatic results. And instead, they see a small, almost invisible amount of growth. It feels discouraging. It feels like nothing is happening. But here's the truth nobody tells you. Nothing is supposed to feel like it's happening yet. This stage isn't about explosive growth. It's about laying bricks one at a time, even when you can't see the shape of the building yet. So let's get into the actual roadmap. There are 4 stages most people go through on the way to their first $100,000. And understanding exactly where you are on this roadmap can completely change how you feel about your own progress. Stage 1 is what I call the foundation stage. This is where your net worth is essentially at zero, or possibly even negative if you're dealing with debt. At this stage, the single most important skill isn't investing. It isn't picking stocks. It isn't finding some secret side hustle. It's simply tracking where your money goes and closing the gap between what you earn and what you spend. Most people skip this stage entirely, jumping straight into investing apps and stock tips without ever actually knowing their own numbers. But you cannot build wealth on top of a foundation you don't understand. So, if you're at this stage, your only job right now is this: know your income, know your expenses, and start creating a gap between the two. even if that gap is small at first. Stage 2 is the acceleration stage, and this is where most of the real progress toward your first $100,000 actually happens. At this point, you've built some savings, maybe a few $1,000s, and you've started investing consistently. But remember what we talked about earlier. At this stage, your investment returns are still fairly small in absolute dollar terms. This means the fastest way to speed things up isn't chasing higher returns or riskier investments. It's increasing your income and your savings rate. This is the stage where side income, skill development, career growth, and disciplined saving matter more than anything else. If you're in this stage right now, ask yourself honestly, is there a skill I could develop, a certification I could earn, a side project I could start that could meaningfully increase my income over the next year or two? Because at this stage, a raise or a new income stream will move you toward $100,000 far faster than any investment strategy will. Stage 3 is what I call the momentum stage. This usually kicks in somewhere between $30,000 and $70,000 in net worth. And this is where things genuinely start to feel different. Your investments are large enough now that market returns start contributing real, noticeable amounts. A good year in the market might add several $1,000s to your net worth without you doing anything extra at all. This is also the stage where your habits get tested the most, because progress can feel inconsistent. Some months your net worth might jump significantly because of market gains. Other months it might barely move, or even dip slightly during a market downturn. The key at this stage is consistency. Keep contributing the same percentage of your income regardless of what the market is doing, and resist the urge to either panic during downturns or get overconfident during upswings. Stage 4 is the breakthrough stage, and this is where you finally cross that $100,000 mark. Something interesting tends to happen right around this point. People describe it as their money finally starting to feel real. Their investment accounts stop feeling like a hobby and start feeling like an actual asset. And this is exactly where Charlie Munger's observation comes into play. Once you're past $100,000, your investment returns alone can start meaningfully contributing to your growth in ways that felt impossible back in stage 1. The same 8% return that gave you almost nothing when you had $5,000 now gives you real, tangible progress. Now, let's talk about the practical strategies that actually get people through these stages, because understanding the roadmap is only half the story. You also need the actual tools to move along it. The first strategy is what's often called paying yourself first. Before you spend on anything else, set aside a fixed percentage of your income, ideally at least 15 to 20%, the moment it arrives. Automate this if you can, so it happens without requiring willpower or daily decision-making. This single habit, more than any other single factor, determines how quickly someone reaches their first $100,000. The second strategy is avoiding lifestyle inflation. As your income grows, there's a natural temptation to upgrade everything alongside it: a bigger apartment, a nicer car, more frequent takeout. This is one of the biggest reasons people earn more money over the years but never actually build wealth. Every time your income increases, try to direct at least half of that increase towards savings and investments before you allow your spending to grow alongside it. The third strategy is investing consistently, regardless of market conditions. Many people wait for the right time to start investing, watching the market, waiting for a dip, waiting for things to feel more certain. But consistency beats timing almost every single time over the long run. Setting up automatic monthly contributions into a diversified investment account, regardless of whether the market is up or down that particular month, is one of the most reliable ways to build wealth steadily over time. The fourth strategy is increasing your income deliberately, rather than just hoping it happens naturally. This might mean negotiating a raise, switching jobs for better pay, developing a marketable skill, or starting a side business. Remember, in the earlier stages especially, your income growth matters more than your investment returns. Don't neglect this side of the equation just because personal finance content tends to focus more heavily on saving and investing. The fifth strategy, and this one is often overlooked, is protecting your progress. This means having an emergency fund set aside so that an unexpected expense doesn't force you to pull money out of your investments or go into debt. It also means having appropriate insurance coverage, so a single medical emergency or accident doesn't wipe out years of progress in one unfortunate event. Building wealth isn't just about growing your money. It's also about protecting what you've already built from being destroyed by a single bad event. Now, here's something important to understand about timelines, because this is where a lot of people get discouraged unnecessarily. There is no single universal number of years it takes to reach $100,000. It depends heavily on your income, your expenses, your location, and your starting point. Someone earning a higher income with lower expenses might reach this milestone in just a few years. Someone starting with a lower income or significant debt might take considerably longer. And that's completely okay. This isn't a race against other people. It's a race against your own previous habits and your own previous excuses. What matters far more than the exact timeline is the direction and the consistency. Are you moving toward this goal steadily, month after month, even if the progress feels painfully slow some months? Because remember what we discussed earlier, this first stretch is supposed to feel slow. That's not a sign of failure. That's simply the nature of this particular stage of the journey. Let me leave you with one final thought before we wrap up. The hardest part of reaching your first $100,000 isn't the math, and it isn't the investment strategy. Those parts are actually fairly straightforward once you understand them. The hardest part is staying consistent during the stretch when it feels like nothing is happening, when your account balance barely moves month to month, when it feels like you're working hard for very little visible reward. But this is exactly the stage where your future self is being built, quietly, in the background, even when you can't see it happening. Every person who has ever built real wealth went through this exact same slow, invisible stage. The difference between those who eventually broke through and those who gave up wasn't intelligence, and it wasn't luck. It was simply the willingness to keep showing up, month after month, even when the results weren't visible yet. So if you're currently in that stage right now, feeling like your progress is too slow, like you're working hard for numbers that barely seem to move, understand this: you are not behind. You are exactly where everyone who eventually built real wealth once stood. The only difference between where you are now and where you want to be is time, combined with consistency. If this video gave you a clearer picture of where you actually stand on this roadmap, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear that their slow progress isn't a failure, and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next video where we'll break down exactly what happens after your first $100,000 and why the second $100,000 often comes dramatically faster than the first. One more thing worth remembering: don't compare your stage 2 or stage 3 to someone else's stage 4. Social media is full of people showing off results after years of quiet, unglamorous effort you never actually saw happen. Comparing your beginning to someone else's middle or end will only make you feel like you're falling behind, when in reality, you're simply earlier on the same road they once walked. Your first $100,000 is the hardest money you will ever make. But it's also the most important, because it's the foundation everything else gets built on top of. See you in the next video. Until then, keep showing up, even when it feels slow.